D.H. Lawrence wrote the novel Lady Chatterley's Lover in 1920. Because of the controversy surrounding its publication, the book underwent several printings and was finally privately published in Florence in 1928. It was Lawrence's final novel. It tells the story of Clifford and Connie Chatterley and their sterile marriage, which ultimately leads her to have an affair with their gamekeeper, Mellors. The story takes place after the First World War and is set in England, in the heart of the industrialized Midlands. Sir Clifford Chatterley has returned to England paralyzed from the war. He and his wife, Lady Constance, moved to their home at Ragby Hall to begin their married life together. Connie finds Ragby cold and dank. She feels that the staff is archaic with their clockwork schedules and formal, unchanging attitudes. She is equally uncomfortable with the village of Tevershall because she finds the villagers ill-mannered and aloof. Eventually, she and Clifford ignore the locals altogether and become self-contained in their own small world at Ragby. Connie becomes increasingly restless at Ragby. Her father suggests that she find herself a lover. Clifford is constantly inviting guests to their home, and among them is a young Irish playwright named Michaelis. Constance gets to know him and feels an affinity for the melancholy young man. They become lovers. Despite their initial intimacy, Connie retains her sense of detachment. She ultimately ends the affair some months later. One day during a walk in the woods, Clifford tells Connie that he wouldn't mind her talking to a lover so that he could have an heir. His sole condition is that she must stay with him so that they can retain the intellectual intimacy that they currently share. Suddenly, Connie begins to wonder if she can continue to live the isolated life she has with Clifford at Ragby. Connie meets Mellors, Clifford's gamekeeper. She recognizes that there is something almost gentlemanly about him and is intrigued about his past. She asks Mellors to give her a spare key to the pheasant hut so that she can go there alone as she pleases. Connie begins to go there each day to escape the confines of Ragby. One afternoon, she encounters Mellors there. Overcome by emotion at the sight of the baby chicks, she allows him to take her into the hut. She lets him comfort her, and they make love. Clifford and Connie continue to grow apart, and eventually, on the advice of her doctor, Connie hires a nurse from Tevershall to help take care of Clifford. Mrs. Bolton, a retired nurse, comes to stay at Ragby. Gradually, Clifford becomes increasingly dependent upon her. This allows Connie more time to continue her affair with Mellors, whom she hopes will give her a child. Connie arranges a trip to Venice with her father and sister. While she is away, Mellors' estranged wife returns to the cottage and discovers his affair. She spreads rumors around the village, which ultimately results in Clifford relieving Mellors of his position as gamekeeper. Mellors writes to Connie in Venice that he is moving to London. Connie leaves Venice and meets Mellors in London, where she tells him that she is expecting their child. They decide they must pretend that Duncan Forbes is the father to prevent further scandal. When Connie goes to Clifford to ask for a divorce, however, he does not believe that she loves Duncan. Under pressure, Connie admits that Mellors is her true love. Clifford refuses to divorce her, and she leaves Ragby for Scotland with her sister. Mellors gets work on a farm in the Midlands, and the novel ends with a letter from him to Connie. In the letter, he is full of hope for their future together. He is optimistic that he will obtain a divorce from Bertha and that when their baby is born they will have their own farm. Early 20th century Britain was a period of rapid social and industrial change. The end of the Victorian era combined with world-altering events such as World War I meant that traditional class hierarchies and economic values were under intense scrutiny. Lady Chatterley's Lover most clearly captures this period of changing divisions through the affair between working-class Mellors and aristocratic Connie. Mellors is someone who was recognized for his ability during the war, but then returns to Britain into his former position as a gamekeeper, and thus his former social class, on the Ragby estate. At times during the novel, he is clearly frustrated to be working for Clifford, who he perceives to be snobby, arrogant and out of touch. Mellors is more worldly than Connie, and is able to slip in and out of his local Derbyshire accent, which Connie finds amusing and even tries to imitate. In contrast, Connie Chatterley has married someone of a slightly higher social class than her, but with very different social views. Clifford believes that the working classes have chosen to remain workers, and that some people, the upper classes, are naturally born to rule. He even compares the working classes to animalistic, machine-like creatures who exist to serve. The class divide between the Chatterleys in Ragby and the villagers in Tevershall is bridged by the nurse Mrs. Bolton, who becomes a strange mother-like figure to Clifford, but also provides the village with gossip about the Chatterleys, which ultimately drives Mellors out of his job. In Lady Chatterley's Lover, Lawrence argues that living a life that is all mind, which he particularly observed among the young aristocratic intelligentsia, ignores the human need for bodily intimacy. Equally, he maintains that pursuing bodily desires alone ignores the essential need for ideas and connection. Lady Chatterley's Lover, therefore, is chiefly advocating for an equal respect towards the mind and body. Throughout the novel, all of the characters struggle to reconcile their mind and body. For example, even before Clifford's paralysis, which put an end to his and Connie's sexual relationship, it is emphasized that Connie and Clifford's marriage is based upon their cerebral, rather than physical, connection. In contrast, Mellors and Connie's affair is initially solely physical. However, over the course of the novel, Mellors' resistance to emotional connection lessens as he recognizes that physical love presents spiritual challenges. Equally, Connie's attitude towards sex as a distasteful, almost pointless act is changed. She enjoys it deeply. As a result, Connie and Mellors appear to meet in the middle, whereby they share a connection of both body and mind. The intense mining, dangerous factories and densely crowded city centers that characterized Britain's economic landscape during the Industrial Revolution are represented through the coal mining village of Tevershall on the edge of the Ragby estate. By contrast, the natural landscape of Ragby is emblematic of the Old England, which Clifford is desperate to preserve. He sees Ragby as a haven from the brutish, changing outside world. However, even Clifford changes from an intellectual artist to an industrialist when he develops a fervent interest in the estate coal mines. Connie is unable to do so, and along with Mellors, wants to shut herself away from the dirty, busy and ugly world of industry and live in a nature-oriented utopia. This is yet more pronounced when Connie and Clifford discuss the possibility of bringing their child into a changing world they are both afraid of and confused by. As such, Connie's attraction to Mellors is both because of the physical pleasure he can offer her, and because, as a gamekeeper who lives in the woods, he represents the Jerusalem-like England of old. Throughout the novel, the youth of today are blamed for many perceived societal ills. For instance, Clifford and his group of friends see the youth's love of dancing and jazz music as corrupting and distracting from the very urgent issues of the age, such as the war, and too overly focused on fun and pleasure rather than serious intellectual pursuits. At the time of writing, young men and women no longer solely prioritized marriage, and dressed and behaved in ways that were more gender fluid. Lawrence seems to be suggesting that World War I has stunted the world's growth and has fundamentally altered the new generation for the worse. What remains so powerful and so unusual about this novel is not just its honesty about the power of the sexual bond between a man and a woman, but the fact that, even in the early years of the 21st century, it remains one of the few novels in English literary history that addresses female sexual desire. It depicts a woman's experience of the exquisite pleasure of good sex, her apocalyptic disappointment in bad sex, and her fulfillment in truly making love. As if all this were not enough to mark Lady Chatterley's Lover as one of the truly great English novels. It is also a sustained and profound reflection on the state of modern society and the threat to culture and humanity of the unceasing tide of industrialization and capitalism.